so forth, with ties into the Saudi royalty, if you will, the Saudi elite, as we say, to Marcos, others connections to the South African apartheid regime, still others with connections into the Shah of Iran. This was this kind of amazing sort of go-go gallery of dictators and the like, and there they are pouring all this money in this poor Mr. Kendrick, and he's saying, what is this? What is
right,
this
they
thing?
ripped off his company, and suddenly it became, this little company became big news. Now, how did George Soros get involved in this?
Yeah, that's another curious thing. He had a bunch of, he has investments all over the place, and he had investments in lots of little oil companies, and somehow, supposedly, he was approached by this Mr. Quasha. Now, they're both based in New York, and they said, hey, why don't you throw all of these things in, and we'll take them and then give you Harken stock. And so he became the largest shareholder in Harken. Very odd, and I assume disturbing for him in the end, because of course he became one of the biggest critics trying to fund the effort to prevent George W. Bush from getting re-election. But anyway, so he was in there. And then we see Harvard University, and this is very, very strange. Again, in Family of Secrets, I tell this whole story, and I go back and I try to figure out, why did Harvard University put, I don't have the number at my fingertips, I think $40 or $60 million, the largest investment they'd ever made in equity in a company in this tiny little unprofitable firm.
Well, didn't Harvard end up owning like 30% of Harvard?
It had a big chunk of it. Yeah,
and that was a very unusual investment for Harvard.
It was, and people in Harvard, some of the auditors and so forth, thought it was very peculiar, and so I traced that back, and what I found, I don't want to spoil. I wrote Family of Secrets sort of like a thriller, so I don't want to reveal all these things, but there's so many revelations. I guess I can give a few of them away. One of them is that I traced back the chairman of Harvard's Board of Overseers, probably the most powerful person there, and discovered that he went all the way back to the Philippines with Mr. Quasha Sr. To the staff of General MacArthur.
Right. I mean, this goes back to World War II.
Right. And where this all leads is something that, somebody's got to make a movie about this stuff, because where it leads is that there were rumors for many, many years that one of the key objectives at the end of World War II was to grab this huge booty of gold that Japan clearly had. I mean, their treasury was based on it, and they had supposedly secreted it in various places around Asia, particularly as it was being clear that they were on their way to defeat. And of course, and the Philippines had these huge gold mines, and Marcos supposedly had some. In any case, what is clear is that all of these people were interested in gold.
Right.
And there are very serious allegations that there is actually some vast trove of untold amounts of gold out there that was seized covertly at the end of World War II and was to be used to finance unauthorized black covert operations. Now, supposedly there may have been this going on in Europe too, that the Nuremberg trial may have not just been about justice, but also about intelligence and about finding out where they had stashed the loot. And I believe this to be true because I've looked at some of the people who worked on the staff of of Nuremberg, and you find people like Leon Jaworski, who is known mostly as the Watergate prosecutor, but actually Leon Jaworski had very serious connections to the Central Intelligence Agency going all the way back. And I document how there were trusts, CIA-connected trusts, using Jaworski's law firm and so forth. So you see these teams in the Atlantic and in the Pacific trying to find where all this money is, basically. And then you see these connections forming between people like William Quasha working with Marcos, and then the man who Robert Stone, who goes on to be the head of the Board of Overseers for Harvard. He's traveling raising money for Harvard, and he's going constantly to Saudi Arabia to ask them for money for Harvard. But you see this circle forming, this this is what we talk about, the permanent government. These are people who all know each other. They're moving huge amounts of money for who knows what, and they're becoming friendly with people who will become the president of the United States. And so we see this with Harkin with George W. Bush. He's in with this whole group, and they make him a wealthy man, and they put him in a position where he's then able to buy a stake in the Texas Rangers baseball team, which gives him his only credential for his resume before he's elected governor of Texas, that he is a so-called successful businessman and the visible face of a popular baseball team.
Right. It's the money that George W. Bush got out of Harkin that allowed him to do this. Now, it's interesting how he got that money, because as you point out in your book, outside investors or people that own stock weren't making any money. It was just the insiders in Harkin. Now, he made what looked like, an insider. He sold stock as with inside information. But also, I think I recall in your book that you point out that he actually borrowed the money from the very company that he was selling the stock from, and then it wasn't reported properly to the SEC, right? Yeah,
and there were some inquiries, but the inquiries were in an SEC that was presided over by his father, and so not surprisingly, it came to nothing. There are a lot of frustrated people in the government who try to do their jobs, who look into these things, and in the end, for whatever reason, the inquiries stop. But yes, he made out going into the company, then he made much more from it, then he used that, and again he parlayed. He came in as one of the partners in the Texas Rangers, but he put in much less percentage-wise than the other partners, with a deal that his small stake would be multiplied, which is what happened when the company was sold. And so Harkin is this murky and strange entity that raises questions about the kind of the larger global economy, about what's really going on out there with these vast sums of money. And so UBS shows up in here, and this is going back to our theme. At one point, Harkin needs cash, and they go to an outfit called Stevens Inc., which is
Jackson Stevens in Arkansas?
Yeah, a large private financial firm in Little Rock, who himself has been a bit of a kingmaker, helped Bill Clinton very much, and also helped George H.W. Bush. I think he had a problem in 1992 trying to decide what to do. He was also a classmate, I think maybe even a roommate at the Naval Academy of Jimmy Carter. And so this man then so-called introduces Harkin to UBS. And then UBS comes in with a bunch of with a stake in the company, which then they, for some reason, get out of quickly. And it goes on to people involved with, I want to say, Kuwait, Bahrain, and so forth. And so you see more and more, you see this kind of pylon of all of these foreign interests that, of course, have a great reason to want to be on the good side of certainly George H.W. Bush, who was coming in as president of the United States at that point, and who was very sympathetic to all of them. One of his more infamous quotes, I don't know how well known it is he traveled as vice president of the Philippines right when the whole world was decrying the dictatorship and the way in which Marcos was stealing elections and gunning down opponents and so forth. And he said something like, "We love you." He said in the speech, H.W. said, "We love you for your commitment to democracy."
Right. He said that to Ferdinand Marcos, right? Yeah. The amazing thing about this history is that it's the same cast of characters that are in power and that have all the money, that are in intelligence, in the banking industry, and you take it back, before World War II, but you were talking about the Philippines in World War II. Well, George H.W. Bush was down there.
That's right. He was working in intelligence as a pilot. Again, this is one of the things that amazed me, Bonnie, was when I started working on Family of Secrets. There are so many books already out there. They don't have this stuff. They say that he was a pilot, but I started looking at that, and he was working for a joint command operating out of the Philippines under MacArthur. They were keeping the OSS out of there. There was a rivalry between MacArthur's group and OSS. And by the way, then you start finding all these MacArthur links to the Bushes.
Yes.
In fact, just a few random examples. When George H.W. Bush later was appointed by Nixon UN ambassador, a position, as I point out, for which he was eminently unqualified, his next-door neighbor in this apartment building over by the UN on the east side of Manhattan was Mrs. Douglas MacArthur, MacArthur's widow.